Hi, I'm Gabby. I work here with Health Promotion. I am going to be presenting the Sleep More, Sleep Better presentation. Maybe we'll give like one more minute, 30 seconds, just to see if anybody jumps in before we start. Okay. While we're waiting to see if any more participants show up, I would just ask everyone to make sure that you're somewhere quiet, possibly. If possible, to turn on your cameras just so we can be a little bit more engaged. There are going to be a couple of questions and discussion points throughout this presentation where I'll ask you to maybe unmute your microphones, or if you look at the bottom of your screen, there'll be a chat box where you can type your responses. And I think this is going to be everyone. So we can go ahead and get started. Um, so this presentation basically is designed to discuss why people are struggling with sleep and then to provide tips and techniques on how to get the most out of your sleep. So to kind of start things off, I'm just going to ask you guys, like I said, you can unmute your microphones or use the chat box just on a scale of 1 to 10, how you guys would describe your recent sleep patterns. One being that you're really struggling, you're not sleeping at all or very little. And then 10 being that you're not having any problems, you're sleeping like 8 to 9 hours every single night. So go ahead and just take a second. And then when you're ready, feel free to respond.
All right, so everyone responded, and actually they said 7.
That's what I would say too, especially with finals week coming up. I feel that number like slightly climbing as the week is going on. Okay. All right. So our first section is going to be an introduction to sleep. Okay, so what do you know about sleep? So we're just going to start off, ask a couple questions. So what are some things you guys have heard about sleep, whether that's from like TV or maybe your friends or family?
Someone said there are different stages of sleep.
Yes, there are, and we're going to get more into that.
That sleep is mandatory for health, and rapid eye movement is a term that they've heard.
Yes, yes. Okay, so does anybody know the difference between rest and sleep? I know myself, I would consider rest to be something more short term, like a nap, and sleep something deeper, like when I'm preparing to go to bed. And then, does anybody know the difference between quality sleep and quantity sleep? There are no right or wrong answers, so feel free to just share whatever you think.
Erin says the difference between how much you sleep and how rested you feel afterward.
Yes, yes, that is very good. So now we're going to talk about some sleep definitions. Okay. So we have sleep quality. This is how much restful sleep one gets. And then we have sleep architecture. This is one sleep cycle. We're going to get more into that as we go on. And then sleep hygiene. So this is one's behaviors and surroundings as it relates to their sleep. So sleeping with the lights on, eating before bed, how loud it is where you're sleeping. Okay. Now you guys are going to see a chart on the screen. And if you're looking, you're going to see different kinds of species and then the average amount of sleep they're getting. So how much sleep do you think the average young adult or adolescent needs?
10 hours a day.
Very, very close. It's about 8 to 9 hours is about how much you should be getting to be getting quality sleep. All right. So then we're going to move into the next section. This is sleep and the college experience. So where a lot of us are right now. So we have a chart on the screen. It looks kind of confusing, but I'm going to break it down into sections for everyone. I was talking so fast, I need to catch my breath. Okay, so first we have, as somebody mentioned earlier, REM, which is rapid eye movement. And then there's something called NREM, so non-rapid eye movement. The structure of sleep follows a pattern of alternating REM and then NREM sleep throughout a typical night. It's about every 90 minutes that cycle restarts. So first, if you're looking on the screen, we have stage 1. This is between being awake and falling asleep. This is usually where light sleep occurs. And then we have stage 2. So this is when you start to become disengaged from your surroundings. Your breathing and heart rate become regular. Your body temperature drops. Then we have stage 3. So this is going to be your deepest and most restorative stage of sleep. The muscles start to relax. There's tissue growth in this stage. Energy is restored and hormones are released. All right. So priorities. If you have a piece of paper with you, or you could use your cell phone, or even just mentally, I want everybody to take a second and just think about your top 3 priorities right now. What is important in your life right now? Okay. Everybody's thinking. Okay, so as you guys were thinking about those top 3 things, you guys can just comment in the chat box, yes or no. Did anybody list sleep as one of your top priorities? I know myself, I did not.
Oh, someone did list safety, sleep, and health.
Okay, so then,
Oh, someone else says that JD says that one of hers was also health.
That's good. That's good. Okay, you guys are already doing much better than I am. So, how important is it to you guys to get good sleep? Somebody listed that as a top 3, so it's pretty important, right?
Yes, JD says it's super important to her.
Okay. So, do college students get good sleep? This is important. So, research shows that sleep patterns change drastically from adolescence to adulthood. Studies have found that during this time, young adults report feeling more awake in the evenings, that they don't get sufficient sleep Monday through Friday, and they often find themselves catching up on sleep when it comes to the weekend. Can anybody relate to that? I know myself, I often will spend the weekday like studying, working, doing things with my friends, and I'm like, I'll just sleep on Sunday. That's like my lazy day. And I'm like, I'll just put it off and I'll like keep doing all-nighters till I get to the weekend. And then that's when I'll allow myself to crash almost.
I totally agree with that sentiment, Gabby. And when you asked earlier, do we prioritize sleep? I wasn't going to say yes, because even though I feel like I should, I constantly put it at the bottom of my priority list, and I stay up later than I should to take care of the other things that are on that list.
Exactly. Sleep sometimes falls short, even though it is so essential, because you think like there are like sleep can just happen later. Like there are things that are like on deadlines or more pressing. So often like the whole point of this is we just don't get quality sleep.
Yeah, and Diane mentioned getting her PhD and then teaching online in the 7-week format as well, as priorities that don't allow for much sleep.
So now we're going to talk about WSU students specifically and the sleep they get. So if you look on the screen, we're going to see a couple of statistics that were taken from 2018 on a survey for sleep. So let me move you guys. Okay. So the first one says about a third of students reported having sleep difficulties because of trauma, or it was very difficult to handle. About 23% ranked sleep during daytime activities as more than a little problem. So, like sleeping while you're at work, or maybe while you're on a Zoom class, find yourself like napping throughout the day. Only 8% of students said they get enough sleep to feel rested 7 days out of the week. That is very, very little. And then a quarter of students reported that sleep difficulties have had a negative performance on their grades. So then let's get more into that. So then, as I said in the last comment, about a quarter of students said lack of sleep has impacted them negatively when it comes to their academics. So now we're going to talk about the causes and consequences of sleepiness. Okay, so I have another chart for you guys. If you're looking, there's a whole bunch of different things that people said were impacting them academically. This is also coming from the same survey that we just looked at. So I want you guys to kind of take a second to kind of look at these, look at the different numbers, what's impacting them the lowest, what are the highest ones that you guys see. Okay. So if you get down to the bottom, you can see that 25% of students said that sleep difficulties is what was impacting them academically. So we see that's a quarter of students. Now, if we go back and we look at the other things on the screen, what do you guys think could play hand in hand with that? Like, do you think any of these other things could be impacting their sleep? You guys can, oh, I already see Aaron, go ahead.
What I noticed when I was looking over the chart was that, the highest percentage things are all either impacted by sleep or could be negatively affecting your sleep. So the anxiety, the depression, the stress, they're either, getting heightened by not sleeping enough, or they're just making it so you can't sleep because of them as well.
Exactly. Hypothetically, any of these could interact with sleep, especially when we looked at the highly ranked ones. Like I see stress is 34%. We have anxiety at 28%, and then depression at 22. So we're just going to talk about those three since those are up there with sleep. So first we have stress. That one is ranked the most. That is a very common thing a lot of people in college are dealing with. So, okay, so when it comes to stress, this definitely can affect your sleep patterns. A lot of people tend to oversleep when they are stressed, and for some people, they just do not sleep at all. College is stressful for a number of reasons, so that's not like an uncommon thing if that's something you found yourself dealing with. Next, we have anxiety. So anxiety might be like the night before a big test or a presentation. You might find yourself having like a really hard time sleeping because maybe you're thinking about it a lot. You're thinking about what could go wrong, and then you end up either getting very little sleep, which is usually very like low quality, or you might not even get any sleep at all. And then we have depression, which is a really big one, especially in this age group of college students. So sometimes, mm, so let me think. Mm, College, like I said, can be like a very stressful place, and especially right now, because we are in like the middle of a pandemic, a lot of people are going through like lots of different things. So it's very easy to feel down, like maybe your grades aren't panning out the way you thought they were going to, or um, you're just having problems with family, or maybe you just had like a breakup. A lot of those things can like impact you, make you feel depressed, which in turn would cause you to oversleep a lot, or maybe you're just not sleeping at all. So now that we discuss stress and depression and anxiety, what do those three things have in common? Anybody have any idea? What do you think those things share with each other?
They all have a mental component to them.
Exactly. These are all things that are going to be related to your mental health. Okay. So then,
Can I add something to that, please?
of course, go ahead.
I think for anybody, students, professors, anybody, if you're anxious, if you don't get enough sleep, et cetera, you're not at the top of your game. And it's really, really difficult to do your best to get A's in your course, to do whatever you want to do. It's hard for me as a professor to make sure my students are getting taken care of, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, Diane brought up a very good point, and we're going to talk about that in a couple slides later, but that is very true. Oftentimes, you sacrifice sleep in hopes of like getting things accomplished, but when you keep doing that, you'll tend to see that the quality of the things that you're like completing instead of sleeping tend to deteriorate. Like if you're not sleeping frequently, you can't be expecting to like continuing to do very well in school. Those things just aren't going to pan out long term. So, to segue into something a little bit different, we're going to talk about technology and sleep. So, you can see someone on the screen. There's a girl, she's on her phone in bed clearly. And then you guys can go ahead and take a look at this table to the side of that. And it's just going to talk about some more, excuse me, some more difficulties. So, oh, my throat just got so dry. I apologize. Okay, so technology can also be a cause of sleep problems, particularly technology used before bedtime. I know I'm guilty of like scrolling on my phone when I'm in bed before I'm going to sleep. And that's a really bad habit. You don't want to keep doing that. The chart that we see is from the National Sleep Foundation. They looked at cell phone use, computer use, and video game usage before bed and found that it was associated with sleep difficulties like waking up repeatedly, more difficulty falling asleep, or not feeling refreshed when you wake up. If one person is on their computer or their phone, like the girl on the screen, there's a blue light that comes from the screen from electronic devices, especially at nighttime, and this interferes with the body's natural cardiac rhythms, which in turn affects your sleep cycle. So technology, part of that is going to be social media and sleep. So if you guys look on the screen, there's just a couple bullet points that you guys can read over. So the relationship between social media use and sleep is pretty complex. Researchers have been careful to note that the relationship between sleep and social media isn't it's a correlation, not a causation. So many factors play into social media induced depression, internet addiction, and stress. All of these can cause sleep problems. So, whichever way you're looking at it, there appears to be a strong positive correlation between social media use and sleep problems. At a high level, there's a strong correlation between social media use and disturbed sleep, which basically means the more social media that you use, the more likely you are to experience poor sleep quality, which I know I use quite a bit of social media and I don't have a very good sleep schedule, just speaking from experience. So then we get into sleep deprivation. So you're going to see a little chart on the screen and it's pointing to different parts of the body. And it's going to talk about how sleep deprivation impacts these different things. So if we're looking at short-term effects of sleep deprivation, we're going to see like irritability, memory lapses, and impaired judgment. So you guys can go ahead and use the chat box again or unmute your microphones, but how many of you have like gone to class or maybe work, or you just had something to do the morning after you've pulled an all-nighter and you found it like really difficult to pay attention or to like understand what you were learning or what you were doing? I know myself, the times where I've pulled all-nighters and then gone to class, it is so hard for me to not only like stay awake, but to like recall what I even learned once I left class. Like I couldn't even tell you like what the professor was saying because I was so sleep deprived. Anybody else relate to that?
Yeah, I just feel much less efficient when I don't get enough sleep. You know, I don't want to exercise. I feel like I eat worse. Just everything overall compiles up when I'm not getting enough sleep.
Yes, yes. Not getting sleep can lead to so many more problems. And that's what we want to avoid. Because when it comes to sleep deprivation, we often reward ourselves for being able to do something. So if I didn't sleep last night, you know, I stayed up all night in order to prepare for this presentation. At the end of this presentation, I'll be like, oh, but like I did it, you know, like I'm rewarding myself essentially because I'm like, even though I didn't get the sleep that I should have gotten, I did this or I did that. And that's not how you want to look at things, because in this moment, it seems okay, like, okay, I missed a couple hours of sleep, but I accomplished what I needed to accomplish, right? But long term, what is that going to do? Like, that's just, it's not where you want to be. It's not healthy. So now I was mentioning long term, we're going to talk about some long term effects. So if sleep deprivation goes on for months or years, because there's some people who struggle with sleep for a like long time. Some people their whole lives they've had problems with sleep. This can definitely lead to like worsening health, diseases, aches, and like more serious health problems. So to kind of talk about these long-term goals, what are you guys's future goals? Like, what is everybody in school for right now?
I'm studying communications, so social media, PR, that's sort of the direction I'm headed.
Okay. Anybody else like to share?
I teach international management for Washington State University. It's an online class, it's a business class, and I invite you all to take it. We have lots of fun.
Okay, okay. There might
And sorry, JD says she's studying accounting and MIS.
Okay. I myself am a marketing major currently. So now that we've kind of talked about what everybody's studying, kind of you're thinking about what you want to do with that degree, where you want to go in the future. What do you guys think could happen if you experience some of these long-term effects? Like if you were someone who was struggling with like sleep deprivation for a long time, how do you think that could affect your goals long term? Does anybody have any thoughts, any ideas on that?
Yeah, some of these symptoms are pretty serious, like irritability and some of these other things might just affect you on a day-to-day basis, but cognitive impairment, that could add up over a long period of time, and then heart disease. These things are pretty scary.
Yeah, those are all true, and some people, their sleep is so bad that they have to become medicated. And that could affect like your schedule, the time you wake up, how you're able, like what shifts you would work, being able to work throughout the day based off of like how sleepy you are. So now we're going to talk about how much money we are spending to stay awake. So there's a chart on the screen. It talks about coffee, energy drinks, NyQuil, all sorts of things that we use to either stay awake and avoid sleep, or if you've been avoiding sleep for so long, we need to purchase one of these things to be able to get sleep. Okay. I keep speaking so fast that I'm getting out of breath. Okay. So just kind of take a look at the screen. I know myself, I probably spend like 20, maybe $30 a month on a lot of these things that I'm seeing on the screen, which is crazy when you think about that long term. Like how much money are you spending in a month, a year, to do something that you could just be doing for free? Sleep doesn't cost anything. You could save so much money by just getting quality sleep. So if you guys are looking at the screen and you are kind of getting an estimate of how much money you're spending like a month, maybe if you don't buy these things often, like in a year, how much money you spent on these things, what could you guys buy with that amount of money? If I calculated like a rough estimate, I would say I probably spend like $200, maybe $300 on like coffee and Red Bull. I could buy a very nice pair of shoes, could buy a pair of AirPod Pros with that kind of money. Where are you guys at on that scale?
You could buy a more comfortable mattress every couple of years.
Yes, you could. And a mattress is very expensive. So just think about like how much money we're using to avoid something that is free and that is good for you. Okay. Anybody else want to share before I move on?
I would just say that coffee is a really big one for a lot of people, which also causes a dependence. So that's another issue all in itself.
Yes. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the way our sleep patterns can affect others. So ultimately, your sleep quality affects other people as well. If you're constantly cranky and lashing out on people because you're irritable and you're tired, that's going to put a strain on your relationships with those people eventually. Also, driving while drowsy. I don't know how many of you like have to commute on like a daily basis to get where you're going, but that's not only like dangerous for yourself, but you're also putting like other drivers, pedestrians, and people on the road at risk when you do that. So if we look at the screen, actually, there's a picture, and that is a bus driver, and it's a little screenshot from an incident back in 2015 where this driver was experiencing sleep deprivation to the point where he fell asleep and he drove off the road. Nobody was injured, but somebody could have been injured, you know, like if there had been a sidewalk there or he had been in a different lane, he could have killed someone potentially, you know? And you have to think about those things when you're making that decision to not sleep. Like, not only are you harming yourself, but you could potentially be harming people around you. So that's not a good place to be. You don't want to be like this bus driver and like falling asleep at the wheel when you have things to do. We don't want any of our students like doing poorly in school as a result of sleep problems. We don't want you guys breaking the bank to spend money on coffee and energy drinks. We don't want you guys to feel like you're hopeless or irritable because you're not getting sleep or you're getting sick, because when you're not sleeping, that can manifest into physical symptoms and you can make your body sick by doing that. So, what are some ways that we can prevent this? Now we're going to get into some solutions. So, first, we're going to talk about short-term things you guys can start doing today, tomorrow, this week. So, first of all, is a lack of sleep part of the college experience? And when I say this, I mean I am a sophomore in college now. And last year I was a freshman and I was living on campus. And I know there were lots of nights where me and my friends would just be like, oh, we'll just sleep later. We'll sleep when we're dead. Like, we're freshmen. Like, there's so much to do. Like, who wants to be asleep right now? We could be like out doing stuff. So it almost seems like sleep is like a waste of time sometimes to people in college. Okay. Do any of you feel like that? Like, maybe we have some varying age groups here, but if you think about like a time when you were in college or you are currently, and you felt like sleep was just not, it's not like a part of college. It's not the college experience. You're not supposed to be sleeping a lot. Does anybody else feel like that?
I feel similarly. Like I try and pack everything I can into my day just because I have a lot of responsibilities, but then I also have a lot of entertainment that I like to consume. And so I usually put off sleep because I'm either getting something done or I want to binge another episode or I want to play a game or something.
I definitely feel the binging another episode. So I want you guys to just take a second and to kind of think about what your problems are when it comes to getting sleep. What is stopping you from getting quality sleep? Just take like 20 seconds or so and just kind of think about that. So I know myself when I think about barriers that are stopping me from getting the sleep that I deserve, it comes from time management skills. So oftentimes I let myself get really busy to the point where I feel like I have to have like an all-nighter, or like I have to cram my day with things to do because like I didn't manage my time properly, which then leads to me not sleeping like for 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours. Or like your social life. So maybe you like live with a lot of people, or you like to go out, or you're in like a club or something like that that requires like a lot of your time. um Poor sleep environment. So maybe you share a room with someone. I know when I was living in a dorm, I shared a room with someone, and that could play a part if my roommate was still awake, if she was watching TV, or if her light was on. Sometimes that would affect my sleep because then I wouldn't be able to sleep. um Mental health problems. So if you're struggling with like stress, anxiety, PTSD, or anything like that, that can affect you. And then what's going on right now. So like COVID, that's very stressful for people. Like Washington State, we're going back into lockdown this month. So that can cause like a lot of like mental health anxiety and whatnot. So there's going to be numerous things, personal and social, that prevent us from getting good sleep, but there are some things that we can do to increase our sleep quality. So sleep proof your room. What is that? So these are going to be a couple tips. So the first one would be turning off your lights. If you're not someone who's afraid of the dark, like I am, then turning off your TV. If you have LED lights in your room, turning those off can be helpful just because a lot of people tend to fall asleep just in like a darker atmosphere. It just shows that that's been more helpful. If you have the ability to adjust the thermostat in your house, I would recommend that. I know not everybody does, but if you can, it's good to find the right temperature, because if you're too hot, you're not going to be able to sleep. And if you're too cold, your body might be too tense to sleep. Buying an alarm clock. So this is a good one if you're someone who's like, oh, like I need my phone close to me in bed because it's my alarm, it's how I wake up. But then you often find yourself on your phone, like once you get into bed, on social media, emails, text messages. You can buy an alarm clock. They're like $10, $5 at Walmart. And then I think there's a picture. Yes, there is. So in this picture, this girl, she's wearing something called sleep phones. It's kind of like a headband that wraps around her head with, actually, I think they're like they make it quiet, like earplugs almost. Um, and then, so clearing stuff off your bed. I know a lot of people don't have this problem, but I do. Like I tend to sleep with like my laptop, my books, clothes, all sorts of things in my bed, which will just disrupt you as you're sleeping. You might like wake up because there's like stuff in your bed and you can't move anymore. It's better to just not sleep like that. And then going back to the alarm clock, just try not to use technology in bed because you'll just end up being on it far longer than you planned. So another thing besides sleep proofing your room that we can do is winding down. So this is kind of preparing yourself to go to bed. So if you're someone who has a hard time like leaving the office or stopping, like knowing when enough studying has been done for the day, kind of tearing yourself away from those things, you could set an alarm for bed. So maybe like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, you set an alarm and you're kind of like, okay, it's time to like log off and to like take a shower, start preparing to sleep. So taking a warm bath, warm shower. You can use aromatherapy soap, lotion, candles. Just make sure you don't fall asleep with the candle on. Oh wait, I skipped one too many. My apologies. Stretching has also been shown in research to help people with sleeping. It's kind of relaxing your body, getting you in that state, especially yoga. I find that to be like incredibly relaxing, just helps your muscles kind of wind down and prepare for sleep. So now we're going to talk about eating before bed. So eating before bed is not bad. I know some people will say it is, but it's not necessarily bad. It's more about what you're going to eat. So on the screen, we see something like, go for it. We have eggs, crackers, bread, yogurt, cheese. These things are going to be better to eat before you sleep versus like a burger, beer, pizza. Those are just going to be a lot heavier and harder to digest. Even though I know sometimes after you eat a meal like that, you feel very tired, but you just don't want to do it long term. It's not going to be good for you. It's going to like upset your stomach, and then you're not going to be able to sleep for far longer than you planned. So back to caffeine, as I mentioned earlier, this is a good food group to stay away from because caffeine is not only found in like caffeinated drinks. So we see like coffee, soda, Red Bull. You can also find it in protein bars, There's certain ice creams that are going to have it, and even medication can have caffeine. So you should be aware of that and make sure to read the nutrition labels before you consume something like this before bed, if it's medication or you're going to eat one of these snacks, just to make sure that you're not unintentionally prolonging your sleep more than you need to. So if you are prescribed medication that you're on that you need to take and you find that it's been affecting your sleep, I would recommend maybe talking to your physician, seeing what other alternatives you could have that are going to play less of a negative role in your ability to sleep. So then I just mentioned caffeine and kind of how like it keeps you up. So what do you guys think caffeine does to your sleep cycle when you're drinking a lot of it, maybe drinking it before bed? How do you think this can affect your sleep cycle? Any ideas?
Diane says it keeps you awake.
Yes, it does. I know myself, when I'm drinking a lot of coffee, it tends to like knock off my whole sleep schedule. So if I can't sleep well tonight, I know like for the next 2 or 3 days, I should kind of expect that because my sleep patterns are going to be off since I was using something to keep me awake. So now that I said that, we're going to talk a little bit more about how caffeine affects your sleep patterns. So I know there's a lot on the screen. You don't have to read everything. I'm just going to kind of give you the highlights. So if you look here, you're going to see kind of this white staggered line. This is going to be what your normal sleep pattern should look like. And then you're going to see this yellow line right on top of it. And this is what your sleep pattern is with caffeine. When you're drinking a lot of caffeine, this causes your heart and cardiovascular functions to accelerate, resulting in mild to severe sleep disturbances, as we kind of look at the end over here of the sleep patterns. Okay. So how can we use technology for good? I know I've talked a lot about how like social media can play a part in sleep deprivation, but not all technology has to be bad when it comes to getting good sleep. So there are lots of apps that you can use to help improve your sleep. There's blockout websites. So those are basically, it's a app and you can put things that you don't want to use. So like I might put like Instagram, like during this time period, I don't want to be able to go on Instagram because I know I shouldn't be on Instagram at 12:30. I should be asleep. If you're someone who struggles with sleep in the sense of kind of like it's too quiet, maybe you can't sleep, you can use sleep sounds. There's one called Calm and Sleep Pillow Sounds. If you're very interested in like your sleep cycle and maybe like health related, there's an app called Sleep Cycle and Sleep Better, and this allows you to track your sleep. And I believe there's something on the iPhone that's built in like an app already where you can track like when you went to bed and then when you woke up, and you can look at it over like the course of your week to see how much sleep you were getting compared to other days. And then so there's an app called Wake Alarm Clock, and this wakes you up in the lightest stage of sleep. So all of these apps are available in the Apple and Android App Store. So I'm gonna give you guys a second if you wanna jot anything down, make a note, look into it, you can. All right. So what about napping? How many of you are guilty of napping? I know myself, sometimes that's what I'll do when I didn't sleep. I'm like, I'll just take a nap. I'll take a little nap, and a 30-minute nap turns into a 4-hour nap. So let's see, what have you guys heard about napping? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad?
I always thought it was bad because it wrecks your rhythm, right? Like if you have a routine where you go to bed around midnight or 1 a.m., well, if you take a nap, then you might not be tired by that time and it just throws off your rhythm.
That is true. That is true.
I've
I
heard
also heard that if you nap correctly midday, then it can actually be very refreshing.
Yeah, I've heard that short naps are okay, but I think not longer than 30 minutes or an hour or something like that.
Yes, yes. So the truth is that they're actually both. They can be good and they can be bad. There's a way that you can nap that's good, like somebody said, so that you feel replenished. However, they can also be a sign of other not so positive things related to your health. So naps can be a sign that you're experiencing high levels of stress or that you're not getting good sleep. Also, you should not be taking multiple naps a day. If you find yourself taking 3 or 4 naps, that definitely means there is a problem with your sleep. So, if you are experiencing like uncontrollable sleepiness to the point where you're napping in crowded environments, so like um class or like on your Zoom lectures or when you're supposed to be working or in a restaurant, this could be a sign of sleep deprivation. Um, and I think Andrea mentioned just a few minutes ago about naps not exceeding 30 minutes. The general rule is that you should nap no more than 45 minutes and you should not nap after 4 p.m. because at that point you're just disrupting your cycle. And if you're going to sleep for more than 45 minutes or after 4, you should just go ahead and go to bed for the night. Okay. So now we're going to talk about long-term changes that we can implement. Okay, so what does this mean for you? So going to class tired causes issues such as not being able to recall information, skipping class to catch up on sleep. I have definitely been guilty of doing that. Constantly rereading things because you're not understanding what you're reading. Not getting quality sleep over time can lead you to constantly feeling tired or dragged out and not having the energy to do the things you want or need. So the takeaway that I want you guys to get from this is that you're working harder than you need to, and you can reduce all of these effects just by sleeping. You know, staying up all night to finish your paper, and maybe the quality of that paper is not so good now. Like you're just kind of building more bad habits, and you could just cancel all of those things by going to bed on time, trying to get a better sleep schedule. So, how would you make a change? Maybe throughout this whole PowerPoint, you guys are like, okay, I hear you, Gabby, and like, I agree, I want to sleep better, but you have no idea like where to start. So, if we look on the screen, there are a couple bullet points that just kind of give you guys some options. I want you guys to kind of take a second to think about which of these you would implement. And if it's not on there, that's okay. You can think of something else. And then I would like everyone to share just one thing, at least, that you could do to make a change for sleeping. So I'm going to give you guys like 20, 30 seconds to just marinate with that idea. Okay. Does anybody want to share first?
JD just put in the chat that she would turn all lights and electronics off before midnight.
That's a very good one. That's a very good one. Okay. Somebody else?
I need to embrace the say no to late night TV. That is definitely my guilty pleasure, and I know that I need to cut it off earlier.
Okay, okay.
Diane just wrote in the chat that retire, but that will never happen.
Yes, those were all very good ones. I would have to agree with Erin on the binge watching of TV. I recently just finished the show The Crown on Netflix, and especially when I'm in like the last couple episodes of a show, I'm like I'll sleep later, like just 2 more episodes and I'll be done, and then I will go to sleep. But that's not a healthy mindset. So I think going forward, like I'll just try to think I can watch the show tomorrow when I have time. Like I don't have to sacrifice my sleep because the show's not going anywhere. A lot of these things that we're like waiting and we're like giving up sleep for will be here tomorrow most likely. So now we're going to talk about making time and prioritizing good sleep. So I know that we've talked about a lot today. So I just want you guys to think, what does getting good sleep have to do with achieving your goals and your values? So we kind of talked about what everybody's majoring in, kind of had you guys thinking about where you want to go. So how do you think getting good sleep is going to help you get there? Anybody like to share? I know myself, if I start taking better care of myself and my sleep schedule now, I think that would definitely help me in school. That would starting off with just retaining information better. So when it comes to things like my finals, I don't feel like, oh my gosh, like I can't remember anything I learned this semester, you know? And if I were to sleep better, then I'm retaining more information, I'm making the grades I want, which long term is like helping me get my degree, which is going to help me get to where I would like to be. Okay, so, oops. Okay, so you don't have to make a change in your sleep. I'm not forcing you guys or saying that it's mandatory because it's not. That's up to you. But if you were going to make one, what do you guys think that would look like? So those are kind of some things that we talked about in the last slide. So getting off your phone before midnight, not binge watching shows, hopefully retiring at some point because you cannot work forever. A lot of us would like to think so, but you just can't. You can't. So benefits of those changes, what would those look like? So the benefits of getting off your phone before midnight, that could even long-term help you if you're someone who feels like you're on your phone a lot. Me and my roommates were just talking about that, like how we feel like we're always on our phones. So slowly kind of cutting off like a time to be on your phone, that could help. Binge watching TV like super late into the night, stopping to do that would help your sleep schedule. Retiring, that would just give you a lot more time to do a lot like other things besides working. So what about the challenges? I know that these things are not as easy as they sound to just like get up and do them tonight. What do you guys think some of those challenges are going to be for you to implement these into your behavior?
I think one of the hardest things is that it's so easy to deprioritize sleep. Like the effects of just one day of missed sleep doesn't really catch up to you too much. It's really a prolonged thing that really adds up. So I think the challenge for me is just like recognizing the importance of sleep and then making it a priority to focus on it.
Okay. Anybody else like to share? I think there's some people in the chat is what it looks like.
Yes. JD says it's a deeply rooted habit, so it takes practice for sure.
Okay. So then to just kind of conclude this part of it, I just want to emphasize when you're thinking of like missing out on sleep and sacrificing your sleep to do other things. Like I said, this was just like an informational PowerPoint. I cannot force you to do any of these things that we talked about. But when you do feel yourself like slipping into those habits again, just try to think about your goals and like the things that you have to get done in the future as kind of like a motivational point of view. Like maybe I'm sacrificing my sleep, which in turn is like sacrificing my quality of like work and the things I'm producing. And then in turn, how that can affect your goals and the things that you'd like to achieve. Okay. So then just to conclude, this presentation was put on by Health Promotion. We offer a variety of educational workshops like this at your request. We have time management, mindfulness. We have a stress management one. I've presented that. So if you found this one helpful and you're looking for some more information, definitely look into attending another workshop. They're free, and it's just good knowledge to get. So I just want to thank everybody for attending tonight. If you'd like any more information about this topic, the email is cougarhealth.healthpromotion@wsu.edu. You can email us if you just had questions. I'm also going to hang around for a minute or two if anybody would like to stay and ask anything or say anything. And yeah, thank you everyone for attending. I hope you guys have an awesome night, and I hope you guys get some great sleep.